אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו לעשות בדברי תורה. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandment and has commanded us to be engaged with the words of Torah. O Lord our God, we ask that you make the words of your Torah sweet in our mouths and in the mouths of your entire people, the greater house of Israel. May we, our descendants and the descendant of your people of the greater house of Israel, know your name and study your Torah for its own sake. Blessed are you, O Lord, who teaches Torah to his people. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who chose us from all the peoples and gave to us his Torah. Blessed are you, O Lord, who gives the Torah. So we have microphones that can be passed on. So you want to give to the other side one, maybe, so that they can. You could maybe give further to Jacqueline, and then this one. And we'll
read it. Just read a little bit and then pass it.
Okay. So
it's already.
So anytime there is narrator, I narrate. Okay. So make sure to speak into the microphone. It doesn't bite. So let's start with. Do you want to start with that first one into the mic?
Back in the days when the judges were judging, at the time when there was a famine in the land, a certain man from Bethlehem went to live in the territory of Moab. He, his wife, and his 2 sons.
So we're not going to read the whole book. I'm going to sections. So this is about a man from the city of Bethlehem, which means the house of bread, house of sustenance. In our story, the man represents the Judeans, which are commonly called in the Bible the Jews. So it happens at the time that when because of a famine in Judea, many Judeans, had gone to exile within the nations. This family had happened to go to the nearby country of Moab. Moab would be situated today as, let's say, east of Israel, like Jordan, Upper Jordan. Moab. It was an enemy country. Moab had waged many wars against Israel. But it was nearby, it's not far from Jerusalem, really. So they went there. Do we want somebody from this side to read now? Okay, next section.
The man's name is
Elimelech.
His wife's name is
Naomi.
And his 2 sons were named Nahum and Kilion. They were Ephraim from Bethlehem in Judah. They arrived in the plain of Moab and settled there. Halachah, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left. She and her 2 sons. They took wives for themselves from the woman of Moab. The name of one was Orpah, and the name of the other was Ruth. They lived there for about 10 years.
So for 10 years, they were in Moab. The 2 sons of Elimelech and Naomi married Gentile Moabites. Now this was complicated because in Deuteronomy 23, it is said that Moabites are forbidden to enter the congregation of Israel for 10 generations. Okay, Deuteronomy 23. For 10 generations. That was because. So, but now 10 years have passed. 10 years have passed. So, after 10 years, the law is no more valid. So, these boys, they needed to get married. There was maybe no Jewish girls around. So, they married Moabites. And one thing we got to remember is that in those days, when a woman married a man, she took on his nationality, his religion, everything. It was not just like she took on his name too. Now that's starting to not even be the thing. Okay, so let's go next section. Who's going to read next?
Then Nachon and Kilion died, both of them, and the woman was left with neither her 2 sons nor her husband. So she prepared to return with her daughters-in-law from the plain of Moab. For in the plain of Moab she had heard how Adonai had paid attention to his people by giving them food.
So famine is getting to be over. So, the 2 boys' dad died. So that was good. And the husband had died. So Naomi was by herself, and she hears things are better in Bethlehem now. So next on this side,
She left the place where she was with her 2 daughters-in-law and took the road leading back to Yehuda. Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Each of you, go back to your mother's house. May Adonai show grace to you, as you did to those who died, and to me. May Adonai grant you security in the home of a new husband." Then she kissed them, but they began weeping aloud. They said to her, "No, we want to return with you to your people." Naomi said, "Go back, my daughters. Why do you want to go with me? Do I still have sons in my womb who could become your husbands? Go back, my daughters, go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. Even if I were to say, I still have hope, even if I had a husband tonight and bore sons, would you wait for them until they grew up? Would you refuse to marry just for them? No, my daughters, on your behalf, I feel very bitter that the hand of Adonai has gone out against me." Again they wept aloud. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth stuck with her and said, "Look, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her God. Go back after your sister-in-law."
so again, those 2 these 2 daughters had become Jewish, not biologically, but as religion. So, but what we see in this situation is that Orpah didn't mind returning to her gods. Ruth didn't want to, but Orpah didn't mind to, okay, well, this or that. Somebody else on this side?
But Ruth said, "Don't press me to leave you and stop following you. For wherever you go, I will go, and wherever you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May Adonai bring terrible curses on me, and worse ones as well, if anything but death separates you and me."
Ruth would have none of it. Ruth would have none of it. So, in the Tanakh,
Wait till they get here. We'll have to figure something else out.
So in the Tanakh, you often have a lesson that is explained by bringing opposites. The Proverbs do that a lot. And there, what you have is a big principle about discipleship. I'll use the word conversion since we're coming from a Gentile, polytheist, Gentile. Some people say that Ruth was actually even a priestess of the gods of Moab. So there is a lot of writings about that. So what we learn here is two different types of disciple. I would say that Orpah was more like what I would coin as a convenience disciple. This God or that God, who cares? This God or that God, who cares? And that's really important to realize that in India, it's like that. This God or that God, hey, the more gods, the merrier, there's more holidays. In the days of Revelation, Domitian, Emperor Domitian, Roman emperors became God after they died. Domitian was a bit impatient. He wanted to become God before he died. So he asked that all people in the world, no matter what other religion they believed, they could worship whoever they wanted, but they also needed to add him to their pantheon of gods. So people could believe in Yeshua, but also they had to have Domitian. They could believe in the God of Israel, but they had to also do that. That doesn't go well for us. It's not this or that. It's this and none of that.
Amen.
Okay, so here we have Orpah was more of a convenient disciple. This or that was the same to her. Her faith, because her faith was solely a cognitive, mental experience, an emotion. Ruth, on the opposite, she had experienced the truth of the God of Israel. And she could not go back on it without lying to her own senses. She had it was something concrete, not an emotion, not a feeling. It was something absolutely concrete. Peter makes in, in 2 Peter 1:16-18. He makes a difference in that with that faith. Here's what he says. He's talking, I would believe Peter talked a lot to the Romans because that's why he ministered a lot after Paul died. For when we made known to you the power and the coming of our Lord Yeshua, he tells his readers, the Messiah, we did not rely on cunningly contrived myths, not stories. On the contrary, he says, not theologies, not stories, no feel-good messages. What we relied on when we told you about it, he says, is the fact that we saw his majesty with our own eyes. No, because you have the reader's one, so I should have it. This is why you can. We saw his majesty with our own eyes. The testimony that Peter used was that he saw Yeshua. They were there with him. When God glorified him, and Moses and Elijah were there, that was his testimony. He saw the miracles. He lived with him for 3 years? That was his testimony, not contrived stories and logical argument. He used facts. So Peter says, on the contrary, we saw his majesty with our own eyes, for we were there when he received honor and glory from God the Father. And the voice came to him from the grandeur of the Shekhinah, saying, "This is my son whom I love." So he's talking about the time of the transfiguration and seeing Yeshua glorified, hearing the voice, saying, "This is my son whom I love. I am well pleased with him." Then he says, "We heard this voice come out of heaven when we were with him on the holy mountain." So this is really important. Opha had a mental, emotional faith. Maybe, I presume. How can you go back on something that is real and concrete? If I tell you, if I tell you a story, you might believe and may not believe it. If I tell you I can cut this tree with my hand, I can do that. And I can explain to you why. And you may even believe me. People believe all kinds of stuff, I tell you. But if I tell you, okay, I'm going to do it, and I do it, maybe I should try. And I do it, and you see this tree falling but me. Anybody can come to you and says, "It did not happen. It's impossible. Nobody can do this." Well, I'm sorry, but I saw it. Because you saw it with your own eyes. Then nobody could tell you it's not true. That's the type of faith that Peter talks about. The type of faith that maybe he wished it were even true because he could go back to his fishing business, but he saw something, he lived something that he could not deny without lying to himself. That's a different faith that is based on theology, stories, myth, feelings, and emotion. Okay? So that's what he's saying. Emotions cannot be relied on. They change all the time. With the weather, or through something someone tells us. Emotions, like we hear somebody tells us something, we feel bad. Right? We see something that makes us feel bad, we feel bad. Ebenezer Scrooge says they can also go off because something you eat. We feel bad. Emotions cannot be relied on. So those whose faith is only an emotional reality are, like James says, unstable like the sea. And like Opa, when the going gets tough, they don't mind going back. Okay? So last somebody read was from here, right? So next reader from this side. Second page.
This says how?
When Naomi saw.
Are you going to read, Brooke?
Well, I don't know where it is. Here, go ahead. So, when Naomi?
Yeah.
When Naomi saw that she was, when Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more to her. So the two of them went on until they came to Bethlehem. When they arrived in Bethlehem, the whole city was stirred with excitement over them. The women asked, "Can this be Naomi?" "Don't call me Naomi," which means pleasant, she answered them. "Call me Mariah, bitter, because Shaddai has made my life very bitter. I went out full, and Adonai has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? Adonai has testified against me. Shaddai has afflicted me."
So the Judean returning, they knew that they had been chased by the hand of Adonai because of their disobedience. This happens during the times of the judges, And in the days of the judges, the story was always the same. Always the same. Israel, little by little, started disobeying. He brought the enemy against them. He saved them with a miracle, and they start obeying again until they start disobeying again. It's the recurring story of the book of Judges. So there is one thing that's interesting though, is that in the book of Judges, 3 times it's written, and there was no king in Israel, so everyone did what pleased him in his own eyes. There's a problem with the king kind of establishes things, and our king does. Okay, so next reader here.
This is how Naomi returned, with Ruth the woman from Moab, her daughter-in-law accompanying her from the plain of Moab. They arrived in Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest.
So this was right after Passover. The barley harvest, that's Passover. She arrived at the beginning of the barley harvest. That's the Omer, the beginning of the counting of the Omer. So okay, next reader, or I think it's on this side.
Naomi had a relative on her husband's side, a prominent and wealthy member of Elimelech's
Good.
clan, whose name was Boaz. Ruth, the woman from Moab, said to Naomi, "Let me go into the field and glean ears of grain behind anyone who will allow me to." She answered her, "Go, my daughter."
So Ruth was a good disciple. She did her homework. And actually Ruth, both Naomi and Ruth, came back knowing about that rule in Israel that we read, that people were not supposed to glean all the way to reap the harvest all the way to the corner, to leave the corners for the poor, and not just the poor, the foreigner in the land who has no inheritance. The foreigner doesn't own anything. He doesn't own land. So you have to do that. Also, when do you want water? You have your water? Okay. Also, when you do your harvesting, there's always a little bit of it that falls off, And the rule was to not go back for that. If it failed, it failed. It's for the poor. I think it's very amazing how the Torah is so concerned for the poor. There's even a verse that says, "The poor is oppressed by you, the rich. I will hear his cry and come after you." Because we are all poor and dependent on Hashem's goodness. So she did her homework. Those 2 women, they knew the rule, so they knew they could come back and they would not be totally destitute. So, and they went to a place. This is the benefit of knowing the word. When you know the word, you don't know only your responsibility, you know your rights. You know your rights. And of course, this law was written in Leviticus 23:22, which I'll read. When you harvest the ripe crops produced in your land, don't harvest all the way to the corners of your field. Don't gather the ears of grain left by the harvesters. Leave them for the poor and the foreigners. I am Adonai, your God. That means you better do it. FFOZ, they have a program, scholarships programs and things to donate. They call it the Corners of the Field. And when I got my first Torah Club book, I had started reading a little bit of stuff. It was a long time ago from FFOZ. and I was interested in the material. I was getting the weekly Idrash. And then I finally went on the website and I saw Torah Club. I thought, whoa. And look at the price. It was over $400 for, it was binders in those days and a set of CDs. And I couldn't afford it. So, and at that time they had their most advanced Torah Club was the first Torah Club number 5. It was all about the commandments and how they apply to us as believers. That's what Torah Club 5 is all about. And I had started, I didn't even know very much about the Messianic movement at that time. I hardly knew there was one. But I had started, as a believer, I had started a file on my computer trying to connect both testaments together. Starting at Passover, I wanted to zip up the whole thing. And I was starting with material, and by searching, that's how I fell on some of FFOZ's material. So I actually called them, left a message. And Boaz Michael answered me. He answered me, and I knew he was the director. So I said, I would like to get one of those series, but I can't afford it. He said, well, it's okay. We can put you on our Corners of the Field program. So I thought, oh, that's a cool name. That's a cool name for it. And then he talked to me a little bit. He saw that I was Jewish. He saw that I knew my Hebrew, that I was familiar with Talmud and all this stuff. But I asked him, I see you have 5 volumes, now there is 6. You have 5. Which one you think should be the best? And he told me you should take the number 5. And it's exactly what I needed. And that was my introduction to Torah Club through the Corners of the Field program. So I was the poor and the foreigner too. So next to read, I think on this side. Okay.
So she set out, arrived at the field, and gleaned behind the reapers. She happened to be in the part of the field that belonged to Boaz from Elimelech's clan. When Boaz arrived from Bethlehem, he said to the reapers, Adonai be with you. And they answered him, Adonai bless you. Then Boaz asked his servant that was supervising the reapers, whose girl is this? The servant that was supervising the reapers answered, she is a girl from Moab, who returned with Naomi from the plain of Moab. She said, please let me glean and gather what falls from the sheaves behind the reapers. So she went and has kept at it from morning until now, except for a little rest in the shelter. Boaz said to Ruth, did you hear that, my daughter? Don't go to glean in another field. Don't leave this place, but stick here with my working girls. Keep your eyes on whichever field the reapers are working in and follow the girls. I've ordered the young men not to bother you. Whenever you get thirsty, go and drink from the water jars the young men have filled.
So Boaz knows that he's a relative to Naomi, that he's a legitimate kinsman redeemer. And we read about that in the laws of redemption in Leviticus. The whole thing is really legislated by the Torah. So, and if you remember, a kinsman redeemer there was many things he could do. He was a blood avenger. If somebody got killed. He was the one who could redeem your property if you went bankrupt and you had to sell it. He could redeem you if you went bankrupt and you had to sell yourself as a slave to pay a debt. He could redeem your land. There was another one. So the Goel, which is redeemer, in English we use the word savior and redeemer interchangeably, but in Hebrew those are 2 different words. Goel is the redeemer who who's going to redeem your land. So here, Naomi, she had this land, she had this property, but she lost it. She had nothing. So she needed a Goel. She needed a redeemer. And this man from Bethlehem was a kinsman redeemer. And he's a good Jew. He wants to fulfill his family responsibilities. Everything that he said in what Jenny just read are his Torah commands, which are protection against oppressing the foreigner. Ruth was a foreigner, and on top of it, a foreigner from an enemy country. It's possible, it must have been difficult to come back to Bethlehem. Oh, there's Moabite here, But here he was Torah observant in that fact, that he was providing protection against the oppression of foreigners. He says, stay here, don't go over there, don't go back. Stay here, you'll be safe. He observed the laws of gleaning to make sure that people did not go back to pick up the grain, and even went above and beyond the commandment. He even told his young men, leave some extra. He went above and beyond the commandment. I would say that Boaz was a very Torah observant Jew. Next, I don't know. Once the microphone is back, it can come back. Okay.
She fell on her face, prostrated herself, and said to him, "Why are you showing me such favor? Why are you paying attention to me? After all, I'm only a foreigner."
Yes. So, Gentile Ruth feels unworthy. So you don't have to be nice to me. I'm a foreigner and from an enemy country. So that reminds me of it's almost a foreshadow of something we read in Matthew 15. It's a bit of a hard read, but we've got to not read it with 21st century American mentality. We've got to read it within the context of its own context. And it's in Matthew 15, 21 to 28. It says, Yeshua left that place, wherever that was, and went off to the region of Tzor and Sidon. So Tzor and Sidon is actually the north of Israel. Today, it would be Lebanon. Today, it's in Lebanon. A woman from Canaanite, who was living there, came to him, pleaded. Tzor Sidon is also the place where Elisha, 500 years later, and Elijah and Elisha resuscitated somebody from the dead. So these stories, they stick around. You can imagine, these stories, they stick around. So a woman from Canaan who was living there came to him. A foreigner to Israel came to Yeshua. She had heard, this guy, he's something. Sir, have pity on me, son of David. She calls him by his Messianic title. She's a Canaanite. She calls him by his Messianic title. My daughter is cruelly held under the power of demons. Yeshua did not say a word to her. Then his Talmidim came to him and urged him, send her away, because she is following us and keeps pestering us with her crying. He said, I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. His ministry was really to Israel. It's after the resurrection that he told his disciples, go into all the world. Now it's for the rest. Like Paul says, to the Jew first. It's chronological. So he said, I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel. That's what he had told the lady. And so the lady, she said, please help me. He says, I didn't come here for you. And instead she said, go to your gods. You know? So, but then she came and fell at his feet and said, sir, help me. He answered, it is not right to take the children's food and toss it to their pet dogs. That sounds pretty harsh. In today's language, it's I don't know, pet dogs and everything. I think it says to the dogs. You know? So it sounds very hard, but today we look at the word dog as an insult. You know, but there is a theology in there. All throughout the Talmud, and don't get offended by that. It's like all throughout the Talmud, and even in the Bible, the nations are represented as animals. The nation, the book of Daniel, Revelation, nations are represented as animals. So basically, what he's saying, I came for my. What he said today in today's language, he says, why should a father take the food from his own children and give it to the neighbor? That's what he said. And give it. It's like, go to your own father. Go to your own father. So he tested her. Maybe he tested the disciples. So, and then she says, that is true, sir. And she used his own Jewish Talmudic analogy. She said, but even the dogs eat the leftovers that fall from their master's table. You know, she had a quick return. She had a quick return, and Yeshua answered her, lady, you are a person of great trust. He called her lady. You're a person of great trust. Let your desire be granted. And her daughter was healed at that very moment. So she wanted the goods ahead of time, the Messiah for the Gentiles. She wanted the goods ahead of time. And Yeshua honored her faith and her pastoring persistence. You know, he did. And this is a little bit like she felt not worthy, but she still begged from a place of an earth unworthiness. I know I'm not worthy, but still, please. You know, that's called faith. And she was asking him, she was honoring him by asking something only the Messiah could do. Long distance exorcism. You know, long distance exorcism. She asked him because she was a Gentile, but she knew he was the Messiah of Israel. So she took a chance. And he honored her. I think that tells us a lot. And the Canaanites were not liked by the Jews in those days. So this is a little bit the way Ruth felt when she told Boaz, why are you showing me favor? I'm just a foreigner. You really don't have to. Even though she knows that he does because of the Torah, but so many things of the Torah tells us to do, but we don't, especially when it comes to forgiving the enemies, and supplying food to enemy country. You know what I mean? We can't expect too much. Right? So here's what Boaz answered her. So next to read would be on this side, I think. Maybe the microphone can come. Yeah, go ahead.
Boaz answered her, I've heard the whole story, everything you've done for your mother-in-law since your husband died, including how you left your father and mother in the land you were born in to come to a people about whom you knew nothing before.
So he did his homework. He saw how Ruth took care of his skin. She took care of Naomi. And he was thankful. He looked at not just what she was, but he looked at who she was. She looked at her character, not her biological descent or whatever. Like he says somewhere else, you're a woman of good character. That's what he looked at. And that's very important. The story tells us to judge by character, not political geography or biological descent. So the Judean kinsman redeemer is grateful to, and he honors Gentile Ruth for caring for Jewish Naomi while she was in exile. Next reader. Go ahead.
She said, "My hope,
Oh,
my Lord,
the one before, May Adonai.
may Adonai reward you for what you have done.
Thank you.
May you be rewarded in full by Adonai, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come for refuge."
That's a beautiful statement. You know, may you be rewarded in full by Adonai, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come for refuge. We can find refuge under the wings of the God of Israel. And it's funny because he prays for Adonai to bless her, but he's going to be the instrument of that blessing. He knows the blessing given to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob for the Gentile who blessed them. Right? He says, I will to Abraham say, I will bless them who bless you. And that blessing was to Abraham. This blessing, they go down. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Judah, and Naomi is a descendant of Judah. So, next reader.
She said, "My Lord, I hope I continue pleasing you. You have comforted and encouraged me, even though I'm not one of your servants."
Again, she knows she's not worthy, and it's a good place to feel. Ruth, the true believer, is not only thankful, but she feels unworthy. She knows that her nation has been banished from Israel. She does not feel a spirit of entitlement towards the covenant of Israel. She feels that way because of her great faith and understanding of the God of Israel and of his people. This was the initiation to Gentile inclusion that we have in Yeshua. Ruth foreshadows the following episode with Yeshua, when it's a story from Luke 7. One of the Prushim invited Yeshua to eat with him. He went into the home of the Parush is Pharisee, and took his place at the table. A woman who lived in that town, a sinner, who was aware that he was eating at the home of the Parush, brought an alabaster box of very expensive perfume. She stood behind Yeshua at his feet and wept until her tears began to wet his feet. Then she wiped his feet with her own hair, kissed his feet, and poured the perfume on them. When the Parush who had invited him saw what was going on, he said to himself, if this man really was a prophet, he would have known who is touching him and what sort of woman she is, that she is a sinner. Yeshua answered, Shimon, I have something to say to you. Say it, Rabbi. He replied, a certain creditor had 2 debtors. The one owed 10 times as much as the other. When they were unable to pay him back, he canceled both their debts. Now, which of them will love him more? Shimon answered, I suppose the one for whom he canceled the larger debt. Yeshua said, your judgment is right. Then turning to the woman, she said to Shimon, do you see this woman? I came into your house. You didn't give me water for my feet, but this woman has washed my feet with her tears and dried them with her hair. You didn't give me a kiss, But from the time I arrived, this woman has not stopped kissing my feet. You didn't put oil on my head, but this woman poured perfume on my feet. Because this, I tell you, that her sins, which are many, have been forgiven, because she loved much. But someone who has been forgiven only a little, only loves a little. So this story is about two Jews, Shimon the Pharisee, and the sinning woman. But what we see in Ruth is that she felt more thankful. Like Naomi, she's Jewish, she can come, she knows she has the right, she has right as a Jewish person. But Naomi feels, Ruth, she feels she has no right. And because of that, still being shown mercy, she has even more love, because she knows she cannot expect anything, but yet she receives. Does that make sense? The next reader.
When mealtime came, Boaz said to her, "Come here, have something to eat, and dip your piece of bread in the olive oil and vinegar." She sat by the reapers, and they passed her some roasted grain. She ate till she was full, and she had some left over.
So the kinsman redeemer invites the Gentile Moabite from an enemy country to his table. Something unheard of. Absurd. But we find this sort of stories in the book of Genesis, the sheep. We find it when if you remember, it's in Genesis 26, when there was Elimelech who was contending with Isaac for the wells of Abraham, and he kept filling up the wells, and Isaac went to find another one, and Elimelech stopped them, and he went another one and stopped them. And then by looking at Isaac's character, Elimelech thought, this is indeed the son of Abraham. And he was sorry, because he had actually an alliance with Abraham. So he went to Isaac and he said, okay, look, I'm your friend. Nothing happened between us. Let's be friends. I didn't do anything to you, right? And Isaac said, And what did Isaac do? He prepared a banquet for Elimelech. He prepared a banquet for his enemies. So here we have, and Boaz must have started going through stuff. He said, Boaz, what are you doing with this Ruth, Gentile, Moabite? Come on, what's wrong with you? Isn't there enough girls in this area? So, next reader, it's a long one.
When she got up to glean, Boaz ordered his young men, let her glean even among the sheaves themselves, without making her feel ashamed. In fact, pull some ears of grain out from the sheaves on purpose. Leave them for her to glean, and don't rebuke her. So she gleaned in the field until evening. When she beat out what she had gathered, it came to about a bushel of barley. She picked it up and went back to the city. Her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned, and Ruth brought out and gave her what she had left over after eating her fill. Her mother-in-law asked her, "Where did you glean today? Where were you working? Blessed be the one who took such good care of you." She told her mother-in-law with whom she'd been working. She said, "The name of the man with whom I was working today is Boaz." Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "May he be blessed by Adonai, who has never stopped showing grace neither to the living nor to the dead." Naomi also told her, "The man is closely related to us. He's one of our redeeming kinsmen." Ruth, the woman from Moab, said, "Moreover, he even said to me, 'Stay close to my young men until they've finished my harvest.'" Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, "It's good, my daughter, for you to keep going out with his girls. so that you won't encounter hostility in some other field. So she stayed close to Boaz's girls to glean until the end of the barley and wheat harvest, and she lived with her mother-in-law.
Here is our Shavuot connection. It says, she stayed close to Boaz's girls to glean until the end of barley and wheat harvest, which is now. The wheat harvest. So this whole thing, they arrived in Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest, and it goes on until the end of wheat harvest. This whole thing happened, the book of Ruth happens during the counting of the Omer. That's when it happens. So we are at the time of Shavuot now. Okay, let's read the next one.
Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, "My daughter, I should be seeking security for you, so that things will go well with you."
So Naomi was taken care of by Ruth. Now Naomi wants to take care of Ruth. She's a good Jewish mother, the wheels are starting to turn. So she wants Ruth to be fully adopted into Israel. She doesn't only know Jewish law, but she knows Jewish customs. Next reader.
Now there's Boaz, our relative. You were with his girls. He's going to be winnowing barley tonight at the threshing floor.
So the harvest season included winnowing the wheat at the threshing floor, a parcel of ground where there was prevailing wind. The grain was tossed in the air and fall downwind at a distance. The chaff being lighter would be carried further away. In Psalm 1, it says, "But the righteous shall be like a tree planted by the rivers, and his tree shall not wither." But then it says, "But the wicked are not so; they shall be like the chaff which the wind drives away. The good wheat, which is heavier, falls and is gathered into the bags and into the granaries, but the chaff, it flies." So, and Yeshua brings the day of judgment as the chaff, which is good for nothing, but burns, that is to be burned. So yeah, we're doing a skit here.
This is really old.
Yeah, they're from 2 years, I think. So when done properly, at the end of the winnowing, you get two piles. The furthest pile would be burned as trash. The other one would be bad for the marketplace. So the harvest was, of course, a time of celebration, and the evenings were accompanied by festivities for having made payroll end of the season. And after the celebration, the owners typically would sleep near the grain to preclude theft. Ruth is instructed by Naomi to approach Boaz privately at the threshing floor. Next reader.
So bathe and anoint yourself, put on your good clothes, and go down to the threshing floor. But don't reveal your presence to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. Then when he lies down, take note of where he's lying. Later go in, uncover his feet, and lay down. He will tell you what to do. She responded, "I will do everything that you tell me." She went down to the threshing floor and did everything as her mother-in-law had instructed her. After Boaz was through eating and drinking and was feeling good, he went to lie down at the end of the pile of grain. He stole in, uncovered his feet, and lay down. In the middle of the night, a man was startled and turned over and said, "There's a woman lying at his feet." He said, "Who are you?" She answered, "I am your handmaid, Ruth. Spread your robe over your handmaid, because you are a redeeming kinsman."
So there is a couple of imagery there. It says here, he went to lie down at the end of the pile of grain. he was at the place somebody would have to go through him in order to get there. He was a protector. Okay? That's why he went to sleep there. It's like a shepherd. Yeshua called himself the door of the sheep. Because the shepherd slept in front of the door, by the door. So any thief comes, he would have to wake him up, to guard him. So that's what it is. So, and eating and drinking. Okay, so and then she asked, "On your handmaid Ruth, spread you robe." So most Bibles say robe, but if you read it in Hebrew, Ruth 3:9 uses the word kanaf. Kanaf means wing. So Boaz did not fly; he did not have wings, but the wings are those. Okay, because they're on the foreside of a person, they were commonly called wings. And the Hebrew word says, you can find it yourself. You can, it will be, if you go to Strong's Concordance, they do not translate it. They should translate it as fringe, tassels, but they do it right, fringe, they do the corners, So basically, to throw the wing, throwing this up, that means it was I'm taking you under my wings. So this is what it is. So she didn't ask him to marry her, but she gave him the proper term. He was an older man, she was a young woman, so she asked him, throw your wings over me. You can see it yourself in Hebrew. It has in Malachi, I think it's 3:9, I'm not sure. It says the Messiah shall come with healing in his wings, in his tali, in his tzitzit. Or so it says, 10 men shall come from the nation and tell a Jew, grab on to his tzitzit and say, let us be with you because we know God is with you. The Jew in question here is Yeshua. The number 10 in Talmudic represents the nation. So that whole idea of the Gentile attaching himself to the tzitzit, the wings of Messiah, is right there in Ruth 3:9. So there's this whole connection there. So Boaz was delighted to accommodate her, but there was an obstacle to overcome. Next reader.
He said, "May Adonai bless you, my daughter. Your latest kindness is even greater than your first, in that you didn't go after the young men, neither the rich ones nor the poor."
So Boaz recognizes Ruth's integrity, that her motivations were pure, not selfish. She didn't try to marry somebody so she has a passport to stay with them. She didn't go to the young. She didn't go to the rich. She was trying to actually redeem Naomi's land. She was going for the care of Naomi. And she was a young woman. Boaz was probably an older man. And we see that in I forgot where I was going. There was another story that went with it. This will come back. So she did not see it as a gain to be part of Israel, but as an element of serving. That's the way we should look at the Torah. Not something we get for ourselves. The Torah gives me this, the Torah gives me this. The Torah is an instrument for serving others. It's really important too that our religion should not be about what we get. Yeshua gives me this and gives me that. And it's all good, it's true, yeah. But it shouldn't be about that. Yeshua is not Santa Claus. You know, we should look at what we have as instruments of service. That's why when he comes back, he's going to ask about those talents, right? What did you do with those talents? So for Ruth, what she was getting was an instrument to serve Naomi. Next reader.
And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you everything you say, for all the city leaders among my people know that you are a woman of good character.
So her good character spoke louder than her Moabite background. Next reader.
Now, it is true that I am a redeeming kinsman, but there is a Redeemer who is a closer relative than I am.
Oh, there is a nearer kinsman who would have first to step aside for Boaz to assume his role. This is a cloud cover over these joyous proceedings. So Boaz takes on the task of confronting this near kinsman in front of the city council to force the issue. And this whole city council, the whole politics, the whole economy is all Torah-based. Next reader. Do we have a reader?
Where's the microphone?
Day to night, if in the morning he will redeem you, fine, let him redeem you. But if he doesn't want to redeem you, then as Adonai lives, I will redeem you. Now lie down until morning.
So, when a widow requested the next of kin to perform the role of a Goel, which is, that's the next part that Goel has to do. He has to raise seed for his brother whose wife died. So for his brother who died from his wife. So when a widow requested the next of kin to perform the role of Goel or kinsman redeemer, he wasn't forced to. In fact, there were 3 conditions to be met. He had to be qualified, he had to be able to perform, and he had to be willing. Boaz was all of them. So, next reader.
She lay at his feet until morning, and then, before it was light enough that people could recognize each other, she got up. Because he said, no one should know that the woman came to the threshing floor. He also said, bring the shawl you are wearing and take hold of it. She held it while he put 6 measures of barley into it. Then he went into the city.
Sounds like a bit of a dowry or something. Next reader.
When she came to her mother-in-law, she asked, who are you, my daughter? She told her everything the man had done for her.
That's quite a question. Who are you? Are you Mrs. Boaz? Next reader.
Then she added, he gave me these 6 measures of barley because he said to me, you shouldn't return to your mother-in-law with nothing. Naomi said, I told her, just stay where you are until you learn how the matter comes out, for the man won't rest unless he resolves the matter today. Meanwhile, Boaz had gone up to the gate and had sat down there. When the Redeemer of whom Boaz had spoken passed by, such and such, he said, come over and sit down. So he came over and sat down. He took 10 of the city's leaders and said, sit down here. And they sat down. Then he said to the redeeming kinsman, the parcel of land which used to belong to our relative Elimelech is being offered for sale by Naomi, who has returned from the plain of Moab.
So there were 2 issues at stake. Redeeming the land for Naomi, taking Ruth to wife. As far as the land's concerned, The man says, yeah, more land. I'll be richer. That's good. Next reader.
I thought I should tell you about it and say,
Oops. Yeah, go ahead.
buy it in the presence of the people sitting here and in the presence of the leaders of my people. If you want to redeem it, redeem it. But if it is not to be redeemed, then tell me, so that I can know, because there is no one else in line to redeem it. I am after you. He said, I want to redeem it. Then Boaz said, the same day you buy the field from Naomi, you must also buy Ruth the woman from Moab, the wife of the deceased son, in order to raise up in the name of the deceased an heir for his property.
Oh, there was another part of the deal. The small writing.
The fine print.
The fine print. So for some undisclosed reason, he's unable to perform as far as Ruth is concerned. Maybe, the main reason why that would be is that, like it says, the Goel Redeemer has to be willing, but if he dies, that means that his inheritance will be shared between his own children and the other child from the other wife of his brother. And not everybody wanted to do that. And some wives said, you don't get to that wife of your brother. I don't care. It's like, I want my children to inherit all that you got. Already it's not much, so as well, So this was a lot of that. There is okay. So he said that. So next reader.
The Redeemer said, then I can't redeem it for myself, because I might put my own inheritance at risk. You take my right of redemption on yourself, because I can't redeem it. In the past, this is what was done in Israel to validate all transactions involving redemption and exchange. A man took off his shoe and gave it to the other party. This was the form of attestation in Israel. So the Redeemer said to Boaz, buy it for yourself, and took off his shoe.
So the idea to come, it's a form like he's not performing something the Torah would want him to do. So it's a form of shame to take off the shoe, shaming. And it's done still in some Middle Eastern countries. I don't know if you remember, but several years ago, Mr. Bush, he used to be president. He went to Egypt and he gave a speech that some people didn't like. And somebody took his shoe off and threw it at him. He missed him, so some people wanted to protect the president. And he says, if he wants to throw his shoe at me, it's fine, it's allowed. But he didn't realize that it was actually a form of shame on you. It was like a shameful offense, yeah. So, so if the near kinsman declined the responsibility, he would have to yield one of his shoes and could also suffer the indignity of being spat upon. So when he declined, he performed the traditional gesture by yielding his shoe to Boaz. So it was intended to be a symbol of disgracing the guy who would not do his thing. But to Boaz, it became a marriage license. So next reader.
Boaz addressed the leaders and all the people. You are witnesses today that I am purchasing from Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech, and all that belonged to Chilion and Machlon. Also, I am acquiring as my wife Ruth, the woman from Moab, the wife of Machlon, in order to raise up in the name of the deceased an heir for his property. So that name of the deceased will not be cut off from his kinsmen and from the gate of his place. You are witnesses today. All the people at the gate and the leaders said, we are witnesses. May Adonai make the woman who has come into your house like Rachel and like Leah, who between them built up the house of Israel, do
Worthy.
do worthy deeds in Ephraim, become renowned in Bethlehem. May your house, because of the seed of Adonai, will give you from this young woman, become like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Yehuda.
So they give him a blessing, and as they celebrated the wedding of Ruth and Boaz, at the end of chapter 4, we encounter a rather strange remark. In verse 12, may your house be like Perez. If you understand the sordid tale of Judah and Tamar, it's like Tamar, she was married to the first son of Judah who died, the second son of Judah who died, and Judah said, I'm not giving you my third son. You're bad news. So, but she, if you remember the story, she disguised herself as a prostitute and had relations with Judah to bring him seed. Why she did that, it's very important. This all becomes part of the descent of Messiah. Judah couldn't go, his children couldn't go childless. The seed of Judah had to continue. It's the seed of Messiah. Maybe Tamar understood that. So basically, when you talk about Perez is one of the children of Tamar with Judah. So, so let's go to the next reading.
So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. He had sexual relations with her. Adonai enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. Then the women said to Naomi, Blessed be Adonai, who today has provided you a redeemer. May his name be renowned in Israel. May he restore your life and provide for your old age, for your daughter-in-law, who loves you and is better to you than 7 sons, has given birth to him. Naomi took the child, laid it on her breast, and became its nurse. The women who were her neighbors gave it a name. They said, "A son has been born to Naomi," and called it Obed. He was the father of Yishai, the father of David. Here is the genealogy of Perez. Perez was the father of Hetzron. Hetzron was the father of Ram. Ram was the father of Aminadab. Aminadab was the father of Naxon. Naxon was the father of Salmon. Salmon was the father of Boaz. Okay. And Boaz was the father of Obed. Obed was the father of Yishai. And Yishai was the father of David.
So and that's the end of the book of Ruth. So at the time of Shavuot in the desert, many Gentiles were there when the Torah was given. With Ruth at Shavuot, Israel brought the righteous Gentile who ended up being the great-grandmother of Yeshua. On Shavuot Pentecost, the Spirit of God was given to the disciples in the form of different tongues so they could bless the Gentiles in teaching them about the Word of God. So by teaching them about the Word of God. So I'll end with reading Ephesians 2:11-22 that Paul addresses to the Gentiles in Ephesus. Therefore, remember your former state, you Gentile by birth, called the uncircumcised by those who merely because of an operation in their flesh are called the circumcised. The term uncircumcised and circumcised meant non-Jew, Jew. It's used that way. At that time, had no Messiah. Gentiles at that time, they were worshiping idols. That's all. That's who he's talking about. At the time had no Messiah. You were estranged from the national life of Israel. You were foreigners to the covenant, embodying God's promise, like Ruth. You were in this world without hope and without God, but now you who were once afar have been brought near through the shedding of Messiah's blood, kinsman, redeemer for all people. For he himself is our shalom. He has made us both one and has broken down the mechitza, the separation, which divided us by destroying in his own body the enmity occasioned by the Torah, with its commands set forth in the form of ordinances. He did this in order to create in union with himself from the two groups a single new humanity, and thus make shalom, and in order to reconcile to God both in a single body, which he calls Greater Israel. By being executed on a stake as a criminal, thus in himself killing that enmity. So when he came, he announced as good news, shalom to you far off and shalom to you nearby, to those nearby. News that through him we both have access in one spirit to the Father. So then, you are no longer foreigners and strangers. On the contrary, you are fellow citizens with God's people and members of God's family. You have been built on the foundation of the emissaries and the prophets, with the cornerstone being Yeshua, the Messiah himself. In union with him, the whole building is held together, and it is growing into a holy temple in union with the Lord. Yes, in union with him, you yourselves are being built into a spiritual dwelling place for God. And our Father, we thank you for the stories that have been kept, and we thank you that we can today understand what these things mean. Ruth, Boaz, all these people maybe didn't even know the importance of what they were doing, and we thank you that they followed you, not knowing why. Help us to do the same. B'Shem Yeshua Mashiach. Amen.